I'm going to try to kind of cover three areas related to Akhwayn, but also our field: perspectives, indicators, and horizons of, as I see it, international education and the work we're trying to do. So I want to start the talk by just pointing out the context. You know, the 21st century we have has got lots of challenges and opportunities that we're dealing with: climate change, democratic practices, the economics of booms and busts, and innovation, inequality, the pandemic, and so on. Diversity, equity, inclusion is something I'm going to come back to. You know, having a world in which people move around and are able to see themselves respected as individuals, citizens of the world or of certain countries, and able to achieve lives of dignity is, I think, a huge challenge of the 21st century, making life better, more livable for all people everywhere. So to turn to Al Akhwayn University, or AUI, I think AUI, like many universities, is striving to address these challenges, and we all are trying to make this work in our own way. So the perspective that I'm going to say is that AUI is maybe interesting, or I don't say unique, but interesting at least, as a born global institution. And I borrowed this from the Knight and Cavouskill work, and this particular theory was pointed out to me recently by the director of Fulbright here in Morocco, who was also arguing that AUI has specific characteristics that make it born global. So born global theory came out of business research, basically, about different companies that were created at their outset to really be engaging in foreign markets and trying to be superior with their performance on an international stage, rather than starting as small in a certain area and then expanding, but intentionally from the beginning trying to be globally oriented. And I think AUI fits this, in that AUI was founded in 1993. Its first students arrived in 1995, but even before any students arrived, we had a modest handful of international agreements that were guiding our work, such as agreements with the state university system of New York, or the university system of Texas, that had provided consultation on the structure of our university. AUI is the only sort of American-oriented university in Morocco, and I'll talk a bit more about our characteristics. But we were set up by royal decree by the previous king to create a new kind of American-style university in Morocco. We're not an American university, we're a Moroccan public university. However, we have strived from our beginning to be global, and I think specifically American, and American has its own sort of way of being global as well, which is, I think, it has its interesting features. And we have been very, I think, successful achieving a number of these goals, to the point that we have a broad, sorry, I'm trying to get my next tab up here. If I get the bar out of the way. Okay, there we go. All right, so today, AUI has got a pretty broad range of agreements. This is just a basic map that has some of the agreements that we have around the world. Lots in the United States, partly because of our American style nature, but many in Europe, and then a handful throughout the Middle East and North Africa, and especially in Asia, which is, I think, pretty interesting. We have, I mean, the number is 300 something agreements around the world, and all of these representing different natures of relationships, from student exchange to general MOUs for sharing specific goals or research partnerships and so on. And it's good. Now, I also flag that we're still growing. We still have a lot to achieve. We don't have really much going on in South America, not much really in Africa, which is a bit ironic for our location. Not much in Russia, China, India. These are places that we are still striving to engage with in productive and useful ways. But we have pretty deep commitments to internationalization abroad, at home, and at a distance. I'll explain that now. So I'm going to move this up again. So just thinking about indicators, in my role, I learned a lot from my predecessor about indicators of internationalization, and she helped to identify sort of 8 indicators that we and I orient towards in a broad sense for the university and other universities. And these are sort of pulled from the literature, you could say. First is language of instruction, that, you know, mainly English, but also I say English plus. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's not just English. It's also other languages of communication that are reflect national or other international languages. Students, how much students are moving around, how many degree-seeking students you have, and then what focus do you have on internationalization at home at a distance. Faculty, the profiles of your faculty, how many opportunities they have to move and for research. Your administrative staff, how are they trained? What kind of perspectives do they bring? Governance and quality assurance. To what degree is your university achieving international accreditations or achieving various standards in university governance and leadership? The curriculum, to what degree can you warrant that your curriculum is global? If you look at a specific syllabus in a class, would it be clear that the curriculum is oriented globally, or is it something different? The co-curriculum is an important one that we always discussed here, that everything on campus is also a site of learning. To what degree is the interactions going on in sports clubs or student clubs reflecting internationalization, and how could you measure that? Then the institutional relationships, how many MOUs do you have? And more importantly, what is the tangible action that is going on with MOUs? My predecessor used to joke that, we could paper the walls of our office with all the general MOUs that were signed that really didn't do anything. We needed to identify meaningful partnerships and have a good idea about how each MOU is driving towards specific action. So moving towards indicators, hold on, just move ahead. Yeah. Okay, so for AUI's specificity, the indicators that we have may be of interest to our group. So here at AUI, we have three main languages that are part of the instruction, but also the outcomes. English is the main language of instruction here, but all students are required to take Arabic and French, especially Moroccan national students. If other students from other nationalities come, they have certain exemptions, but they all have to have some exposure to English or Arabic or French to graduate. And then we also have other languages available that students can take, such as Amazigh or Spanish and so on. But English is the main language of instruction here, which I think from yesterday's discussion, we discussed a bit how, that's good, but also maybe has slightly problematic things as English as a global language, but we don't want to see English, overwhelm national or local languages. Students, we boast a 75% study abroad rate, which is very high amongst the world, especially for institutions that don't require a study abroad experience. We do not require that. Some institutions do, and they of course achieve a 100% study abroad rate, or they have very specific things. We have a 75% study abroad rate based on our bilaterals, our ability to let students be free movers and so on. And we're very proud that our students get out into the world. We don't have any trouble convincing our students to go study abroad. On the other hand, we are striving more to have international degree-seeking students. We are probably not at the highest levels that we could be here. Right now, we would like to have 10% degree-seeking students, international degree-seeking students, but we're only at 3 to 5%. And it could be, we could also add in the number of visiting students to touch that international number. Right now, we're quite low because of COVID. We only have like 3 students here as visitors for this spring, but hopefully that will change. Normally we have 60 to 100 international visiting students. The faculty here, I think, are a very strong point of pride. All of our faculty are international in different ways, including but beyond citizenship. Yes, we have many faculty that are, about 40% of our faculty are not Moroccan. They're like me, they're Americans or whatever. But many of our Moroccan faculty have dual citizenship, and all of our faculty, even though Moroccan faculty who haven't got another citizenship, they have all studied abroad and had those experiences. So I can't think of any faculty that is not international in certain ways. The administrative staff is mainly Moroccan, but has a lot of capacities and has had many training experiences and international exposure here on campus. I would say administrative staff are some of those that benefit the most from internationalization at home, because they work with students from around the world and faculty from around the world and have to sort of wrestle with the different expectations that come there. The governance and quality assurance, we're very proud that we are accredited now by NETSHI, which is the oldest regional accrediting body in the United States. We also have program accreditation from ABET, APAS, CEA for language, and so on. The curriculum is, I think, fair to look at. Any of our syllabi have a certain international focus. This is something that we're continuing to develop, and Dr. Mustafa is here with us today, and he could probably comment on that more, how we're driving with faculty to ensure that the syllabi and the curriculum in general reflect this international goals that we have. The co-curriculum, we do have specific co-curricular goals that we try to measure, that our co-curriculum, the student activities, athletics, and so on, try to build towards diversity, leadership, and autonomy. And this is something that's a little bit tricky to measure, but it's something that we do keep an eye on. Our interinstitutional relationships are very high. We have many active exchange partners. We have formal criteria to develop partnerships, and so on. So obviously, the Med Tuyash program focuses on internationalization at home. So I wanted to say a few things about that. I would say we are very interested in, we integrate this throughout the university. Internationalization is the job of everybody at the university. Yes, my office in the OIP, we coordinate and give perspectives and so on, but all of the different units are focused on that. We do not have some of the formal things that other universities have, such as within every faculty an internationalization officer or something like that. But we're a relatively small university with only 3,000 students. So we have close connections with the different administrative units that we have. And I want to just give an example of how we really focus on this. When visiting students come here to study, they are just considered regular students. They're housed with regular students. Their status is the same. They can join athletic clubs and start their own student groups. They can run for student council. They can do anything basically that any students can do. And this is something that is maybe distinct. Some universities decide to put students up in international houses or restrict their ability to participate in certain groups, but we have fought hard and long to make sure that all visiting students here are just regular students. Some of our challenges, I think, are diversity, equity, inclusion. We are getting more international students, specifically from around Africa and other areas. We have scholarship students from Afghanistan and so on. And their experiences, as I learned from them, is mixed here. Students do experience from time to time microaggressions or even overt racism. They feel even on off campus that happens, but in campus they feel sometimes subtly excluded from campus activities because students will speak in Moroccan Arabic during student club meetings, and the students will feel that that's a challenge. I think that these are very interesting subtle challenges for us to continue to work on. And it goes back to the language issue. Yes, we're English, but at the same time, we speak Moroccan Arabic and French, and we don't want to lose that. But we're also trying to wrestle with the fact that we have a broader population where not everybody may speak Moroccan Arabic. And how can we create a community where there is that level of inclusion amongst everybody? And I think the needs are strong to continue to demonstrate the impact in complicated ways. Yes, I run surveys every semester on the experiences of our students on study abroad. I try to kind of test the campus climate. But this project that we have for the Med Tuyash on digital storytelling, I think, is wonderful. It really will hopefully demonstrate the complexity that happens for students on campus, on study abroad, and even at a distance, which we'll talk about briefly here in a second. But these kind of projects, I think, bring out qualitatively wonderful narratives of what we're all trying to achieve. So just looking forward, I really want for our university to have students and faculty, staff really moving and being able to go places all the time. As I pointed out, AUI has gaps, especially in student mobility. We have not had students going to study in other universities in Africa, India, China, Russia, and so on. Our students do go to North America and Europe, and that's good. But I think we have a big world, and there are many, many quality institutions around the world. And I hope our students will start to go to them more over time. And we'll have, of course, students coming from those institutions to us over time. The internationalization at home, again, I already mentioned the challenge of diversity, inclusion, and identity. And I really feel that the solution is just to create a constant and dynamic dialogue among students, faculty, and staff. I mean, I'm working right now to have workshops. I already had a workshop with faculty. We're working with the human resources to create workshop series that is a dialogue about, international experiences, creating shadowing opportunities. And of course, for students, we're working on a broader work to address issues of inclusion and so on related to the issues I mentioned. And the last point I wanted to mention is this, that we hasn't talked a lot about it, but internationalization at a distance. Many of our students especially have had the phenomenon happen where they wanted to go study abroad somewhere, but the pandemic stopped them. So they ended up staying at AUI or in Morocco and studying online at Technical University of Munich or wherever. And it was an international experience. Obviously, it wasn't their desired one. They wanted to move, but they couldn't. And it still had the opportunity of being at an international university and studying with other students online. So I think there's a need for us, and I personally want to explore this more. What was the nature of that experience? I think that is probably going to be a more and more common thing where students are studying, maybe at their home institution, several classes, and then they have one or two classes online at an institution, and the institution that is offering those online classes, I think will need to labor to make that an international experience, to ensure that the class composition has got an interesting mix of international students, that the syllabus reflects the broad array of students that are in the class and really creates a more inclusive climate. So we'll need to look hard at those experiences and try to evaluate what's going on as another indicator, another aspect of internationalization. So in conclusion, I think that, the work we're doing is really, a key and maybe the key to many of the 21st century challenges that I mentioned: diversity, inclusion, climate change, and so on. None of these are going to be solved, I think, without broad collaboration amongst us as human beings, and us as institutions of higher education play a key role in creating the mindsets and opportunities that lead to those attitudes of collaboration and cooperation that we want to have in our world. And we want to push back against the forces going in the other direction. And all I can say is at the end that working with people like you and committed global colleagues on this point is really a gift. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for your work and for your energy. And I look forward to continuing this conversation throughout the coming years.